Hello students, here I'm going to give you tips and tricks for the 12th board examination in biology and paper 2. So paper 2 has got 10 chapters and let us see what we think is important from each chapter. Now chapter number 10 is called as Origin and Evolution of Life. In this chapter, you must know very well the Oparin-Haldane theory of chemical origin of life. Then here you also need to know about the Darwin's theory of natural selection. Also remember the modern synthetic theory. Also know and remember the paleontological evidence of human evolution. And finally, please know the Urey and Miller's experiment. These are very important concepts you need to know in chapter number 10. The next chapter is called as Chromosomal Basis of Inheritance, chapter number 11. Here, please know and remember the structure of chromosome with diagram. Also know the different types of chromosome according to the position of the centromere. Is it okay? The next thing here you need to know very well is the structure of the X and Y chromosome. Is it okay? Next thing here, you should know what is color blindness and what is hemophilia and what is criss-cross inheritance. Is it okay? That is how these diseases are inherited from parents to offspring. And finally, in this chapter, you also need to know about sex determination in human beings as well as in birds. Is it okay? So these are the important topics for chapter number 11. The next chapter here we have is Genetic Engineering and Genomics. This is a very small chapter, so you basically here need to know about DNA fingerprinting, all the steps involved, and also know who discovered the technique, and also know where all DNA fingerprinting can be applied. Is it okay? Next here, you should have an idea about the Human Genome Project. Is it okay? And all the applications of the Human Genome Project. And finally, in this chapter, you need to know about gene therapy and all the applications of gene therapy. Is it okay? The next chapter is called as Human Health and Diseases. It is one of the most important chapters. Okay, chapter number 13. Here, you must know about innate immunity. You should also know about acquired immunity. You should also have an idea of the structure of antibody with a diagram. This is one of the most important diagrams they usually ask in the board exam in paper 2. Next thing here you need to know is about erythroblastosis fetalis and how this condition really happens. Next in this chapter you need to know about malaria, cancer and AIDS. And finally, most important here, you need to know about the structure of HIV with a diagram. If you don't get antibody, you usually get asked about the structure of HIV. Is that okay? Then the next chapter is called as Animal Husbandry. In this chapter, we should know about the objective of animal breeding. Here, you should also have an idea of what is inbreeding, what is outbreeding, and what is crossbreeding. And then for this chapter, please know the fisheries very much in details. Is it okay? Because fisheries is where they ask you either an MCQ or in one sentence. All the names of freshwater as well as marine water fishes you must know by heart in this chapter. The next chapter is called as Circulation. In this chapter, you must know the heart external as well as the internal structure and all the labels that go with it. Is it okay? Next thing in this chapter, you must know the composition of blood. You should also have the idea of blood coagulation or clotting of blood. The next thing you need to know is blood vessels. What are they and what do they really do? And then you must know the conducting system of heart. Do not forget this part. That's why I added later for you to remember. It is very, very important. Also know about the lymphatic system. Just a general idea, like a short note on the lymphatic system. Is it okay? The next chapter you have is Excretion and Osmoregulation. Very favorite chapter for a 7-mark question. In this chapter, you must know the different modes of excretion in animals, especially ammonitelism, ureotelism, and uricotelism. And also remember the name of the animals for each case. The next thing you need to know is Human Excretory System with diagram. This could be a 7-mark question for you this year. The next thing you should know is the longitudinal section or the ALS of kidney, the diagram, the description, and all the labels on it. Okay? Next thing you need to know here is the structure of nephron. Very, very important. Next thing in the chapter you must know is basically the idea of urine formation. This could very well be asked as another 7-mark question in bio paper 2. And when you write about urine formation, you have to write about all the 3 basic steps involved in urine formation. And they go with the names of, you should know ultrafiltration, and whenever you write about ultrafiltration, you have to write about the diagram of Malpighian body. Very, very important. Is it okay? Then the next step is called as selective reabsorption. And finally, you have tubular secretion and urine will be formed. In this chapter, you must also know about the regulation of kidney functions, especially the hormonal regulation. Is it okay? As well as the neural regulation. The next chapter is called as control and coordination. The biggest chapter, that's why I'm divided into 2 parts, hormonal and nervous. Here, I'll talk about the nervous system. In the nervous system, you should have the idea of the meninges and how they are important. Next thing you should know about is the lateral view of the brain, the diagram, very, very important. Next thing you should know are the functional areas of the cerebrum. Know all the areas really well and what is the function of each area really well. Either diagram or description, one of the most favorites of the examiners. Is it okay? Next thing you should know here is the structure of cerebrum. And here, you don't have to write about the functional areas. They are 2 different questions asked very specifically in the board exam. Next thing you should know about is the TS of the spinal cord. Very well, you should know this, especially diagram point of view. The next thing in the chapter of nervous system, you must know about the cranial nerves. How many they are, the names, the types, and the functions. Is it okay? Next thing you should know here is the formation of a typical spinal nerve, the process and the diagram with it. The next thing here you have to know is the ultrastructure of synapse. Very, very important. Remember the neuromuscular junction? Synapse, you should know this very, very well. The next thing in this chapter you should know is the reflex action in details with the diagram. Right? And then in this chapter you must very well know the explanation as well as the diagram of ear and eye as sense organs. Is it okay? Then moving on, this chapter we continue with the part called as the hormonal system. In the hormonal system, you must know the morphology of the pituitary gland as well as the VS or the vertical section of the pituitary gland diagram point of view. You should know all the hormones that the pituitary gland secretes, both the anterior as well as the posterior pituitary gland. The next thing you should know here is a diagram of the TS of thyroid gland. You should also know the thyroid hormones and their related diseases, right? If they are in excess or if they are produced in deficiency. The next thing you should know here is the adrenal gland, very, very important. And of course, the hormones of the adrenal gland. Here, you should also know the mechanism of hormone action. How do hormones act? If they are water soluble or if they are lipid or fat soluble. Okay, this is about the hormonal part of this chapter number 17 called as control and coordination. The next chapter is once again the favorite of the examiners, human reproduction. In this chapter, you must know the human male reproductive system with diagram. And obviously, you should also know about the human female reproductive system with a diagram. You should also have an idea of the menstrual cycle in details, one of the favorite questions for 7 marks. Is it okay? Next thing what you should know here is the process of spermatogenesis and oogenesis, the similarities and the difference between the two. The next thing you should know is the structure of the sperm and the ovum. Very, very important. Right? Okay. Next thing you should know about the process of fertilization. Continuing on in this chapter, you should also have an idea of the blastocyst formation and the vertical section of the blastocyst. Is it okay? Then in this chapter, you should also have an idea of birth control methods. Is it okay? And then finally in this chapter, you should have the idea of 2 STDs, namely syphilis and gonorrhea. We've already covered AIDS in the previous chapter, so I'm not talking about AIDS here. Okay, then the last chapter, number 19, is organism and environment, part 2. Is it okay? Here, you must have the idea of all the interactions that you see in the population. Is it okay? Next, you should also know about natality, mortality, and growth rate. Right? Next in the chapter, you should have an idea of endangered species. And do not forget the red data book. Okay? Next in the chapter, you should have an idea of what is in situ and what is ex situ conservation. right? In this chapter further, you must have the idea of air pollution, what happens and how and what can we do to control it. And obviously, after air pollution, next thing you should know is about water pollution, what it is and how do we control it, okay? And this is all the 19 chapters of biology, right? Study well, take care, good luck, and God bless. Thank you.